back. You're listening to Houston Real Estate Radio. I'm your host, Shanna Register, and every week we bring you news and information you can use on your next real estate transaction. If you've got a real estate question, give us a call here at the studio, 281-882-8088. We'll be happy to answer your real estate questions right here on the air every week. And if you missed any of today's show, you can catch up online at HoustonRealEstateRadio.com. This segment, we're going to be talking about HOAs and looking at different recreational programs and facilities available for HOAs to take advantage of and some of the pros and cons of them. I've got Jim Sheffield here in the studio. He's been on the air with me before. He's rejoining us here in the studio today. He is the general manager of Northampton's Mud District and very knowledgeable about these topics. I know you've been doing this for a very long time. We appreciate you coming on and sharing with us.
I'm glad to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about some of these neighborhoods that want to incorporate some things, but they don't even know where to get started because it's quite the process and the undertaking to make changes to the neighborhood, whether you're just adding some walking trails or a pool, tennis courts. There's so many things to choose from now. One of the big issues now are the skating parks and the dog parks, and there's just so many things that can be done. So I want to hear some of your expertise on those issues because you've been doing this for so long and you've seen a lot of neighborhoods that have implemented things that didn't work so well and other neighborhoods who have, like yours, that have implemented some things that worked very well.
Well, you're absolutely right. The first thing to do is do an assessment and go to the residents that live there and who will be paying for these things and ask them what they want. And you can do that through a survey. Okay. And typically the response to a survey is only going to be about 20%. And sometimes you find that people who are championing a cause will rally to that, so you have to sort through that. But the first thing to do is this assessment through, and I would recommend a survey. It's the only way to get to everyone. You can do a mailing for a couple $100 in any neighborhood and get that feedback. And from that survey, then look at what potentially if someone comes back and asks for something that's just not possible, well, then you have to eliminate it. The next thing to do is get the items that came from the survey and then go look at what others have done and how they did it and how they financed it. In the beginning, you talked about HOAs, and it's true that typically the summer swimming pools that were left by the developers and things like that are financed by the HOA. But that may not be the most effective way to do it. A mud district has far more funds and are allowed by the state of Texas now to do that.
So you may want to look to the mud district for some additional support. Well,
you can certainly go and ask. And some mud districts have really warmed up to this recently. And it's a far less part of their budget than it would be where an HOA has to charge an assessment. The mud districts have a general fund, and they're a taxing entity.
Mm-hmm. And, if depending on what your neighborhood wants to do and what facilities they want implemented, there are some different recreational programs available. Let's talk about those because someone who's thinking they want to have a swim team or they want to have a soccer team, where do they even go to get started? I mean, there are programs already in place. You don't have to start it from scratch, right?
Well, that's true. The most famous one is, at least in this area, is the Northwest Aquatic League. And they have a structure, and they're very helpful. And so if you have a swimming pool that has lap lanes in it, then the easiest thing to get going is a summer league swim team, which will start up sometime as soon as the water gets warm in April and end pretty much always by July the 4th. Okay. And the average involvement in that can be up to 200-300 children. So it's a real benefit, and it's the cheapest swim lessons you can get. Just put your kid on a swim team, and they'll teach him everything. Now, as far as soccer or running or anything like that, that's a different thing. There are existing organizations, and they'll certainly help you. But most neighborhoods don't want to dedicate 5, 6, 10 acres to soccer, and the county does a wonderful job, particularly Precinct 4 on the north end up here, of helping those programs.
So let's talk about some of the things that you might see come back on the survey, some of those things that you've seen homeowners ask for in the past, kind of the pros and cons. You mentioned pools. The pool's left there by the developer, but the issue with the pools is they're expensive to maintain.
Well, the pools are expensive, and especially from a lifeguarding personnel, and there's a liability there. So you're going to spend, on an average pool, you're going to spend $30,000-$35,000 just on lifeguards during a summer program. And then the pool itself is going to need frequent maintenance. Anyone who has a backyard pool will know exactly what I'm talking about. So multiply that times 100 and you'll see. So the cost in water, chemicals, and things like that can run there. Most of the pools that you see today were left there because they were an amenity built by the developer. And they're wonderful things, but that will be a big ticket item on anyone's budget.
Let's talk about the pros and cons to a lot of these tennis courts that have been left by developers. I know before the show you and I talked, some neighborhoods have tennis courts with weeds growing in them, and then there are other neighborhoods who have tennis courts that are well used. What are some of the pros and cons to having those? Well,
let me back up a minute and say that tennis is one of these very organized things where there's leagues and things, and mainly adult, that you can get going in, and so that can fulfill a lot of people's needs. If for competitive aspect, as far as recreation, remember you can only get 4 people on a tennis court. So if you have 4 tennis courts, you can only serve 16 at a time. Now, you might do better in a camp situation for youth, but then you have to have personnel to come and teach those things. But a tennis court is a low maintenance item, and so we do see a lot of tennis.
What about a pavilion?
Pavilion is the number one thing, in my opinion, every neighborhood should have.
And why is that?
Because you can have scouts there. You can have birthday parties there. You can have family reunions there. The maintenance is very low. We've had numerous weddings and things like that under pavilions, and the cost of building a pavilion is very, very low.
So for a neighborhood that doesn't have a clubhouse, would you recommend they build a pavilion?
If a neighborhood doesn't have a clubhouse, I'd throw a pavilion up tomorrow. That will be a very heavily used item. But remember this, there'll be competition for it, so there has to be a reservation system.
Right.
And if you don't currently have a recreation staff in your neighborhood, then you're going to have to put a website up or something like that.
Sure. What about the basketball and skateboard courts that we see? I saw a new community recently that has a skateboard park. What do you think of those?
Well, from the standpoint of being a professional manager of a neighborhood, I will tell you that skateboard parks are tremendous liability. And if you want to meet people that live 70 miles from your home, then put a skateboard park in.
They come from all over, huh?
Yes, they do. They have and
it's always kids using it.
They're very active on social media, and it becomes an issue at some point. Basketball courts are even worse, and they're noisy. You can hear a basketball bounce for a quarter of a mile. Okay.
What about, let's see, what have we not talked about? Dog parks.
Well, dog parks, I'm going to be a little caught out on that one because, there are plenty of nice dog parks around, but I wouldn't support one in my neighborhood just simply because I don't think there's a need. With all the hiking, biking trails and detention ponds, people seem to be fulfilling their needs with their pets.
And baby pools, I know you've talked about before, huge cost of maintenance, and they can easily be converted to splash pads. Do you think splash pads are a good idea?
Absolutely. I think a splash pad as an accent to a regular pool. Remember, splash pads only appeal to infants, and once the kids get a certain age, they're going to want a regular swimming pool.
So have it as an accent piece with the pool.
Yes.
All right. And weight rooms.
Well, we've had tremendous success. We have 24-hour fitness facilities, card access, and that was probably the best use of our money.
Okay.
Outside of pavilions.
Lots of great information. Any other resources you can think of for homeowners who are thinking about starting something in their community?
Yeah, I'd say do your survey and then go to a community and meet with someone like myself and let me show you around.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you so much, Jim. We appreciate you, Jim Sheffield, over at Northampton Mud District, the manager of the Northampton Mud District. Lots of great things going on in that community and lots of the other communities around Houston. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors here on Houston Real Estate Radio.